Last week in Cardano, there was some tension, among everyone. You had, Charles come out with a tweet that was quickly deleted stating that, SPOs need to quickly upgrade. And then you had a lot of SPOs like Adam Dean and Andrew Westberg come out and say, hey, it's not time to upgrade. We have a testing cycle here. Charles is incorrect. He's not, in line with the engineering team here. And then Charles quickly, responded, deleted that tweet within like 10 or 15 minutes, and then responded with a requote saying, yes, this is the proper upgrade cycle that you need to follow. And then Adam Dean came out the following day and stated that, there was a bug that, led to the testnet being catastrophically broken. And that, caused some medias to pick up because of really the word catastrophic. And, looking at this from a technical standpoint, testnets kind of break all the time. Like that's pretty normal. And, to me, Adam Dean saying that it, was catastrophically broken, it didn't seem like a big deal to me. Media is going to pick up media things. And of course, it's going to matter with the short term. And, there is one side too that says, well, the long-term narrative is impacted because you still have people saying that, Cardano is a ghost chain. You still have people, talking about the issues with parallelism, having two swaps in one block. And, those articles were written 8 months ago or even longer now. And, Ethereum people that I meet still say that. So there's a bit of, long-term damage that comes from, media and these articles. However, you tweeted out a few days later and you stated that, on Ethereum, developers can talk about bugs and they can be very open about some of the issues with Catalyst, and that, we have a hush-hush culture here and that, we can't on Twitter go and talk about this. And, Charles's response to that was, there are proper forums to do this. There are proper channels for this. And then later you also responded and said that, you're very passionate about Cardano. So sometimes you don't explain the way you feel in the correct way in the public image. And I really just wanted to hear your thoughts on all of that. Was the second tweet there, a comment on the first one? And, where are you standing with all of this? Do you think that we have a hush-hush culture here? And sorry for making that such a long-winded question. I wanted to also explain kind of what happened as well.
Yeah, so I can give you some background on the full thing. So actually, the new testnet that's being spun up is the fourth Cardano testnet in existence. We had the original testnet way back when. At some point, that got transitioned to a new testnet. Then we had the Jormungandr testnet, and now we have this new testnet again. So, testnets roll over from time to time, and it's not only an inevitable thing. It's, it's not that big of a deal. But, it's important that we keep in mind that last times we went through these testnet rotations, the protocol was not decentralized yet, right? At the time that these happened, it was Cardano Foundation, Emergo, and now HK. And whenever there's an issue, we would get into meetings with me and Charles and other people, and we decide, what's happening and what's our public message to the community about what happened, how do we want to proceed with this. And at the time, we were very concerned about, the exact wording of the message, how to get it to the right people, to our community members, and not the rest of the community. And because at the time, Cardano is not decentralized, and we want to, make sure the project, maintain its good image as we continue to grow. Obviously, we're not in the same position anymore as a community. Now, Cardano is a very open protocol, and there's people from all over the world running stake pools and building in Cardano. And there's no way for you to get everybody in one Discord channel, one Telegram channel, and get everybody in the same place. And so the messaging has to be more broad than just in the inner channels. But at the same time, you also don't want to have a negative press. There's a certain balance to this. But, I think the Cardano culture has grown to be fairly defensive of itself for a variety of reasons. One is that it's an extension from this time that when we were still in the Byron era and things were still kind of, close-knit. And so we were careful about, what goes down in what way. And some of that still remains as a culture. Some of it is because Cardano has historically not been well treated from the, mainstream, I wouldn't say mainstream, crypto media. It's not quite mainstream, but, crypto
Yeah.
media. And so there's a fairly defensive culture in the Cardano ecosystem related to whenever something bad happens, because people are concerned about, what people who already have a negative bias towards the project might say. But at the same time, if you look at a lot of the crypto influencers and why they have hesitance about Cardano, one of the main reasons they say is I don't know anybody building on Cardano. I've never heard of any development on Cardano or something happening on Cardano. And I think, to a certain extent, part of that is because, we keep everything in these silo boxes and in these, curated groups that we maintain. Whereas if you look at projects like Solana and Ethereum, they have a very active developer culture. You may disagree with their product, the way it works, and all that. And these projects definitely have a lot of critical issues of their own, catastrophic, if you will. But despite the fact that they're hugely flawed ecosystems, they have a large builder culture. And I think part of this is because they're very open about what they're working on. Raj from Solana, Vitalik from Ethereum, they actually post on Twitter saying like, I think there was a mistake, or this might be a problem. They actually ask for feedback and say like, hey, like we think this might be an issue. Like, what are your thoughts on this? And I think this is like kind of culture that really builds an engineering culture. Because as an engineer, you want to get involved in Ethereum, for example, and you're not sure what to build. You've studied computer science and you want to get involved. You're not sure what's like the thing where you can maximize your impact for the community. And you go to crypto Twitter and there's all these Ethereum and Solana engineers talking about the problems they're trying to tackle and how they're trying to tackle it. And you read this and you're like, oh, actually, like, I think maybe I can tackle this. And you go to their, ecosystems and you get involved and you message people around to, get a better understanding what's happening. And through these Twitter threads, you get a lot of insight you might not otherwise get if all of this was kind of bundled up inside these curated ecosystems, which you may not be willing to participate in. So I think, as we are getting into a more decentralized ecosystem, we have to think about, how to best curate this kind of, engineering culture where we make it easy for developers to learn information and get involved, while also, accepting that we have a fairly defensive culture and crypto media that's not necessarily in our favor, and trying to balance around this. And this is, a very hard thing to do, as you can imagine. But I think it requires some thought because, I think we're not quite in the optimal configuration. Charles might disagree with that, and I accept his point of view. But I think there should be, more ways to, be open about, what's happening on Cardano and how people can get involved, because at the end of the day, most developers are not in our curated communities. They're not on the IOHK Discord channel. They're not on our GitHub. They're random people involved in the crypto Twitter, ecosystem, and they're a developer and they're not sure what to build next. And if the majority of the developers are not in our camp yet, we need to reach out to them and get them interested in the problems we're trying to solve. And I think, being more open about the problems we have is one way to get there.
Yeah, that's really a great point. And I really agree with most of it. It is a hard problem to solve because there was value derived from Adam Dean's post. While we did have some, mainstream headlines saying Cardano is catastrophically broken, look what happened in the following week. Look at how many Stakepool operators showed up to actually help test, to, ensure that Vasil was ready for everyone else. And that media that happened from Twitter and from these public platforms actually brought more testing to the chain because of that. So it's a really tricky balance of, one, people on Twitter that aren't developers, they don't really understand what's happening. So when they read that, they get scared and terrified. And, we do need to find the right balance. And I think I do agree with you that we're a little bit too close to the hush hush. We're not all the way there. And I think somewhere in the middle where, the things that you say are very well crafted, to bring that help when it's necessary, to allow developers to help you as well, without scaring the general public and having it picked up by media. But yeah, I think it honestly turned out as a good thing, in my opinion. And it honestly is a stepping stone for Cardano in terms of decentralization, because, you mentioned, these silos and, how we're very defensive about Cardano. We're also very defensive about IOG. We've been very defensive about Charles in the past, and CF, and also Emergo. And, as a content creator, I make a lot of, public, appearances, or, I say a lot of things. And, if I say things bad about, IOG or Emergo or Cardano Foundation, even if it's constructive, I often get a lot of negativity and backlash when the statements that I say were crafted in a way to not be harmful and crafted in a way to be constructive. However, I still get that backlash. And I mean, if you look at the MPO versus single stake pool operator and the issue, a lot of that, attacking was infighting between the community, when in reality, parameter changes were being held back and CIPs were being held back by IOG. And at that time, no one could say anything negative about them. So to me, this was a step in the right direction to come to a more constructive community, and also to start that dialogue about the proper process of where do we have these channels, what is said, how do we say it, how do we be constructive about this. And that's why I also really liked your tweet about a few days later, where you mentioned your passion, and sometimes, your passion will take over. Where did that next tweet come from? Was it from the previous tweet about this, or was it just, tweets in the past, or your overall sentiment,
Yeah, well, it came from because, as I'm trying to think about, what can we do next for Cardano, I often try and, publicly talk about, what I think might be improved. So for example, what I talked about for, this kind of composability for the smart contracts, I've made it like a few tweets in the past kind of around this topic. And I talked about a few different approaches we could have taken for this, and then why those different approaches are not going to work out. And people see like, oh, like, this is not going to work out for this reason. And they see that as like, me attacking Cardano in whatever way. And, I can feel that over time, there's been more and more kind of tweets, mentioning that, I should not kind of brainstorm about these things on Twitter, which I think is, the wrong approach because of what I talked about earlier, where I feel like brainstorming these ideas in public space, helps encourage people to get involved and join the builder community in Cardano. And, I think with the kind of tweet I made the other day with like the hush culture kind of tweet, I think for a lot of people, they kind of saw this as like, an extension of all of this. And they don't see this in the context of, our companies, building Cardano, we're working on the core protocol, we're trying to, figure out where are the best next steps. And they instead see this as, some random guy on Twitter they don't necessarily know, who's often making tweets about, how different approaches on Cardano are possible. And so for a lot of people, this is kind of the last straw. And, I understand that, not everybody can have the full context. Not everybody's watching all these, YouTube videos and following all the Twitter threads and following the GitHub, and they don't necessarily have the context for, why these tweets are being made. But, for DC Spark, we made an extremely active effort to be as incentive aligned with Cardano as possible, right? For Milky Media, we don't have our own token. We use the ADA token as is. For, our funding for a company, a lot of the funding comes from catalysts, from public grants, talking to people about what they need to get built. We try and be very transparent about this. We have like a DC Spark grant page where you can see the progress for everything we do. We're very active in podcasts, Twitter Spaces, Twitter, all these communities to, be as close to the ground as possible with people beyond Cardano. We join a lot of in-person events. We've tried our best to be, as well aligned with the community as possible. And we have some other projects in the future as well related to gaming. And you'll see that for the gaming as well. Like, we tried to make, everything related to the gaming at least the money grab as possible, and as much of something that, sounds realistic. And in fact, a lot of the engineers at DC Spark actually get, to be honest, paid below market wage, because they're aware that a lot of their funding comes from Catalyst proposals. And the Catalyst proposals we made, if you've ever looked at them, they're very low in value. Like the car proposal was like, 45K or something. And if you tried to do this in any other company, this would be like a 6-digit amount. But we, all of us are passionate about what we're doing. And, we're okay with doing this because we think this is like, something that philosophically we're aligned with. And, it's kind of sad to see that despite, the fact that we've done so much effort to build our company in this way, that after my last tweets, a lot of people are trying to like, find conspiracy theories about like, oh, this tweet is like actually a secret dig towards Charles, or like, this tweet here, it must be because they have like some ulterior motive where they're profiting from the community on this. And, Charles, I've been working with him for 5 years. I consider him a good friend. All the stuff we've done, we're making very little profit on this. On a lot of Catalyst proposals, we lose money on it or break even, and we, make money off the side and ways to make up for that. And so clearly, despite the fact that we did our best effort at all of this, this is the reaction we got. So clearly, I made a mistake. I thought that, from people understanding the background and where I'm coming from, that people understand, all this history and context, but clearly a lot of people don't, and that's totally fine. And, And so I made a miscalculation, and some people may have lost respect for the Cardano community out of the way that I word my statements. And obviously that's not our effort, because I've been involved in Cardano for 5 years, and our company's deeply integrated in the ecosystem, and there's nothing more that we like than Cardano as an ecosystem succeeding. And so if I make a statement that gets misinterpreted and it ends up causing harm, then this is a bad decision on my call, and I have to own up to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Cardano from the beginning, one thing that I always liked about it was, how transparent it was. You had AMAs from Charles, you had the Cardano Live podcast, you had you making videos about it all the time. So I think your tweet was taken as, Cardano is hush hush about everything, when in reality it's not. It's been very transparent. It's been very open about a lot of things, but you were specifically speaking about development and the developer channels and bringing eyes to, things that are being worked on, testing to, bring the protocol to a better place. And that's kind of the issue with the internet is, when non-developers, non-tech folks, not people that haven't seen that transparency in the past are going to immediately see that and then, freak out. And however, I would say ignore it. I've had a lot of people, comment and say, screw you, Big Pay, I hate you. And I'll reply to them and say, hey man, like, why would you say that? What's going on? And they're immediately like, oh, I'm sorry, man. I was having a bad day. My wife this, and people immediately switch up. And it's very easy for people to be angry and flamboyant on the internet when they see something like that without the full context. But oftentimes they immediately come around when they have that full context. So I wouldn't really say that you made a mistake, but I respect that, you feel that you did. And also that, you're going to be more careful in the future, kind of phrasing things for those that do immediately react.